This is an open letter for Mr. Jon Stewart. Hello, sir. How are you? Hope everything is fine. Here's the thing. Uh, I heard you have multiple time made this comment that Russia is bad because it's an autocracy, or it's an autocracy, and China is bad, because it's an autocracy and it's no democracy over there. And in general, the left's idea has become left and the center, which the left has moved to the center, but the center's idea about uh, our system is always better than their system. And now there are two aspects, I have two answers for you, and that is one, can you show me that your system will work for them? And two, show me that your system has worked for you. I mean, just the simple concept that you have come up with, that democracy is better than autocracy, and this is why. Show me in both two uh, fundamentals about these that show me that this actually works for you, and then show me it will work for people from other cultures as well. But you can't do that. I mean, the first part is quite easy. Show me, has it worked for you? Well, has it? Has it been a better choice? Not in terms of, human cost. I mean, look at it this way. Uh, your democracy mixed with your form of economy, which is also free and this and that and the other, is basically a meat grinder. You know, the exceptionals rise to the top, and the rest are basically part of the grind. They get destroyed because they just grind away for the cream to rise. You know, for the cream to rise, a lot of things has to settle down. That's all the casualties of this freedom-loving system, in which, in an autocratic system such as China, uh, yeah, it's autocratic, and you don't get to say, but then, like your father, the state sees its duty to take care of all its citizens. That's all about health, free health care, or near free health care, and lack of homelessness. And the more autocratic a state is, the more it, you know, is obligated, it obligates itself to, you know, have to take care of all citizens. Yes, I'm the autocrat, I'm the boss, but, I have to provide some kind of health care for everybody, some kind of education, good education for everybody. These are the perks of autocrats. If you think you're the father, then, you know, pull up a chair and do your thing to actually act like your father. And when the autocrats don't act like your father, they get overthrown. But as long as they do act like your father, and they, take care of, the whole of the nation, then they stay on. This idea that, here's the thing about democracy. You want to look at it as a family thing. You can look at it as democracy being uh, the people, the society is like orphans who get a new dad every 4 years as a president, who get a new dad every 6 years, new dad every 6 years, new uncle every 6 years as a senator, and new aunts and uncles every 2 years as representatives. New. No, we kick out the old auntie and we get a new auntie for ourselves in our seat, or we keep the old auntie. A lot of these, especially minority black skinned women in the House of Representatives, they literally have become old aunties in their seat. And everybody loves them because this is old auntie this and old auntie that. But the idea is I can change my uncle and you can change my dad, and the people can. Do will kids make a better choice if the kids had the choice of choosing their own parents? Again, show me that it has worked for you. In 280 years of democracy and freedom in Uncle Sam's land, I understand somebody did this calculation and found out that it's like only 8 years or 10 years, something in very low double digits number of years that Uncle Sam's managers have not been in war. And all of these wars, from the fact that Uncle Sam's managers never lost land, always gained land, that tells me that they were always the aggressors, the expansionists. So in 275 years, minus 8 years of not war, in 275 minus 8 or 10, the rest of it, 200 and some odd years, you've been in business of democracy and freedom and all of that. Of the 275 years, 270 years of it, you've been at expansionist wars, and always gain more territory, including after World War II. Is this a better system? What if everybody was like you? You see what I'm saying? The problem, you see the problem here? It's, you know, there will be always excuses to invade this shithole and that shithole. Gulf of Tonkin, 9/11, maybe not. But the point is this, that there is always reason to, expand and bring more order. Of course, if it has order, that doesn't count. It has to be under our order. Show me your democracy has worked better than an autocracy. I don't see it. Of course, every time there is an autocracy, you put them under sanctions. So you're basically tipping the scales. Please don't tell me these autocracies, they all have failed. No, many of them have been benevolent autocracies, and they would not have failed, or their people would not be going through such misery if sanctions and embargoes were not raised against them. So it's not the autocrat that is bringing misery, but it's the sanction and embargoes that bring misery to the people, to his people. Again, in many cases, that the autocrat had been, benevolent, or had eventually become benevolent. It's not he most of the time, he or she, he who most of the time who brings misery, but it's the sanctions. Look at, for one case, look at Syria. The guy is a doctor. For some fucking reason, he has reached the post of presidency, which he wasn't really designed for. He's an intellectual. He's not a extrovert going out there and shaking every hand and kissing every baby. He's not that. Most of us are not like that. So he wasn't designed to be a populist. He wasn't designed to go shake hand and kiss babies. But if you pick up the fucking sanctions and embargoes that you put on him, he has provided health care for all his people. For one thing, you haven't done that. Free of charge. So the guy who has provided health care for his people free of charge so all the members of his tribe can, be healthy. That's a bad guy. That autocrat is bad just for the because he's an autocrat. No, I don't mind being ruled by an intellectual autocrat. I have a feeling he wouldn't be sending his people to a meat grinder in order to expand the empire, as the British, as the French, and as I just said, Uncle Sam's managers have always been also expanding. So I don't understand that you very in a very self-satisfied manner, look at yourself in the mirror and say, yes, this is the best. And this is the best. Democracy and freedom and capitalism, the best. But then, historically, when you compare your hand with the British hand, forget about your hand. Let's look at the British hand. When you look at the British hand with their democracy and their freedom and capitalism and this and that, they ripped a new one for almost half the countries of this planet. The French and Spanish took try to rip a new one for the rest. Populations decimated and genocide is taking place all over North America, South America, Africa, Asia, all by the hand of these democratic Europeans who were ruling themselves in a very democratic fashion. Well, sometimes they had some kings, but eventually, even during their democratic times, they still conquered and are conquering. Sort of like, oh, because a couple of people from there came and did something bad over here, we're gonna take over the whole fucking country over there. So I don't see your democratic. You can't show me that it has worked for you. And the second part of that was that you can't tell me that all cultures in this world are primed to accept democracy as a form of inviting other perspectives, being inviting to other perspectives and other viewpoints and trying to hash it out in a very overt manner. You can't tell me all cultures are primed for this and or will be accepting or can handle this form of chaos, in this form of at least vocal chaos in expressing your opinion. Many can handle it, many can't. It's just the culture is as I said, the state, if it's seen as the parent of the people, and the culture is ingrained within certain populations on earth, and this is in many cases their brains have formed in this way. And you take North Korea and South Korea. In North Korea they worship one guy, in South Korea they worship five guys, and none of them are politicians. They're all families who own these great chibols, great corporations. Samsung, which produces everything from baby diapers to satellites. So these big corporations which bring everything under one roof, many of these families are literally worshipped in South Korea, just like Kim Jong Un is worshipped in North Korea. So you must understand that this is a culture. You should figure out that this is a culture, obviously, that thought and thinks and does and expresses their existence in this format. They understand autocracy and they appreciate autocracy and they like autocracy. They worship this pyramid worship the guy above them, and most of all they worship the chief guys at the top. You want them to change their culture and not be Korean? Has it worked? How many have you been able to change? Can if you can't change it with words, arms are not a long-term solution. By missiles, you can't change them. That's not a long-term solution. If you feel there is an absolute need to change anything as a long-term solution, it has to be spoken. If you can't change them by speaking to them, arms are just an expansionist tool. So if basically with arms, you're saying if we can't change them, we're going to force change upon them. For, dude, the culture is not where your culture is. It's part of the culture. It's part of the culinary. It's part of the history. It's part of their food culinary. It's part of their history. It's part of their poetry. It's part of the whole thing. You can't tell them to change their poetry, which for example, these they call them narco something. They make these songs about these drug lords in Mexico. You want to tell them that no, you shouldn't do that. It's part of their culture. It's part of their language. It's part of their music. It, it's how they see the world. And you're trying to tell us that no, autocracy is not bad. What if it's part of their routine? What if it's part of their routine? It's part of who they are. You want to tell them that, you know, they shouldn't read the Korean poets who, advocated for this culture of, autocracy, or said a lot of good things about this culture of autocracy. You're trying to tell me that, they should, and many of those have been very well-known poets in Korea. So they're read. So you want to separate their culture from their existence. You want to make Americans out of Koreans. Or, make Americans, out of Russians, or make the Russians into some kind of British. They just, they don't have the same vibe. Every time a British person passes by me, I just get the chills. And every time I see a Russian guy, no matter how bad looking he is, I'm like, I'm a little uplifted. As in, like, yeah, you know. I don't know. It's just, this is who they are. Russians play, straight, and no funny business. and then the British do everything else but play it straight. Just then you tell me that the form of government for both of them could be the same. What are you talking about? Could the Russians can practice democracy? Again, has it worked for you? Not really. You have grinded your poor and bastards, and the weak have been grinding under the wheels of capitalism for 275 years in North America. And before that, the poor were getting crushed under the wheels of British free capitalist system. There's certain portion of the society that, the capitalist system expects them to put a bullet in their own head. Sort of like, oh, we don't need you. You want to do us both a favor, put a bullet in your own head. We don't need your skill. We don't think, we don't need your opinion, or we don't need your skill, or we don't need your complexion, your skin color. We don't need you. We need you now, and we don't need you tomorrow. So tomorrow, remember to put a bullet in your head, because, you know, our system brings the cream to the top and wastes a lot of the sediment. Has it worked for you? Yeah, for few has it worked very well. Thank you very much. The Mars family are set, have been set for 100 years, and are set for the next 1,000 years as Mars family. Heirs of Mars family. It has worked for very few, a handful, a two handful, a bucketful, 0.001%. This democratic free system. I mean, and you come from the time of, you know, even white slaves being owned in Europe, and then white and black slaves and red slaves being owned in North America, and you come from there, and it's still very, this wheels of capitalism, free markets are very, these wheels are very, are creating a lot of carnage, have created a lot of carnage throughout their recent history that we know of. I'm not saying the old feudal system was better, but I'm saying that, and I'm not saying the old kingdoms were much better, but I mean, if you find a leader, an intellectual who may not like to shake hands and kiss babies, but is an intellectual who can hold his side of the conversation up, and a bunch of other intellectuals have chosen him to be their spokesman, as the case is in China, and I think as the case is in Russia. I mean, whatever you want to call Putin, you can call him, but you can't call him a fool. You just can't. It's right there. It's written that you can't call Putin a fool, or Medvedev, or any of the top brass in the Russian system. You can't call them fools. You can call them anything else you want. But tell me, should we count together the number of fools that, have been the number of fools you had at the head of your tribe, Mr. In England, in France, in North America, fools that we both agree. Some fools we don't agree that we don't both agree that they're fools, but most fools, sane people, agree that these people are fools. And your system brought them somehow to the top. I thought the cream supposed to rise in a capitalist free economy system. I thought cream supposed to rise. But how is it that in your political system all that rises is half educated, half moral, half. Yeah, so I don't, off the bat, I don't. Here's the thing. I don't love autocrats. I don't care to live under an autocracy. But those who do, and because their culture doesn't say too many bad things about autocracy, let's not sanction and embargo them in order to prove that the autocracy is bad. No. What that means, sanction and embargo, what it really means is that, oh, you have met a leader who's not bending over. This is what it tells us. The brown and the black and the red and the yellow skins of the world. What it tells us that as soon as you say somebody's an autocrat, you don't say MBS is an autocrat. You don't call the sheiks of Arabia, all of them collectively. You don't call them autocrats. You don't call President Sisi an autocrat or the King of Jordan as an autocrat. Suddenly it's Putin is an autocrat. Oh yeah, okay. What if he's doing a good job? If it's got a peaceful situation going, don't send the CIA in Ukraine up their ass. Don't go to their neighborhood and try, banging their wife in the form of Ukraine. You know, so the idea is that you haven't, on the first step, you haven't been able to show us that your system works for everybody, not just JP Morgan and Chase, but for everybody. You haven't been able to show that it hasn't worked for everybody. You have a lot of casualty from those people that the system experiments on in the military, outside the military, the minorities, the prisoner of wars that the systems in Western Europe and North America tested on, medical experience and this experience and that experience, to your concentration camp, which came out of a democratically run Germany. I don't think if there was a king up there, he would be running concentration camps. I think if it was a half-ass fucking intellectual up there, he wouldn't be running concentration camps. There weren't any intellectuals. I mean, if you're willing to listen to a Hitler with a normal painter and with very grandiose ideas, then you're not an intellectual either. So the point is this: but your democracy brings these shit shows to power. I think if you put down a nice nice framework of choosing a leader, which makes sure only the intellectuals go into the position of leadership, and even the presidency is not run by one person, but it's a council of presidency, and the framework is such that doesn't demand extroverts who like to look in the mirror all the time. If your system of selection of candidate doesn't, is not based on who loves themselves more, who's in love with their own image more, who's in love with their own voice more, that person has a better chance of becoming a president than anybody who likes to think for a living. You see what I'm saying? I mean, the audacity that George W. Bush had to think that, oh yeah, I'm a C student with a bunch of historical failures in terms of education and in terms of business, but still I think I should be a president. And some people actually back him. That's a failure in your system. You keep saying our system is so good that only the cream rises, but you can't show me the cream. Or there may be speckles of cream there, but the rest of it is not clear what it's not, but it's not cream. Then you tell me that no, this democratic system is much better than that autocratic system. Salute. No, sir, you can't tell me that. You can't tell me your system is better, has worked for you, and you certainly can't tell me that your system is you should prescribe your system for other people with other cultures. You can't even show me that. So what are you showing me, sir? Why are you prescribing a medicine that hasn't even worked for you? At least show me that this medicine has worked for you with the education and housing and healthcare. How show me that? Show me your citizens living, uh, like I guess people in Finland. Show me the standard of living of Finland. Then tell me, oh, we got our citizens living in this standard of living, all of them, and we have money left over. Now we're going to go take over Afghanistan with our leftover money. Show me that, then you have permission to go to Afghanistan and take it over and show them how it's done. But you keep invading and attacking other places in this world because they're autocratic, and he keep prescribing your system to them, but we can see from behind you. We can see the fire and the chaos behind you. You're trying to sell us your system, but your system your system has got so many homeless and uneducated and unhealthy, while at the same time you're trying to prescribe us your system. Wouldn't you just laugh off the representative of Uncle Sam? It's like, what are you talking about? You want to prescribe us that? And if we don't agree, you're going to invade us and force us into that. Has it worked for you, that medicine? Mr. Jon Stewart, please, consider not thinking that all autocratic systems are innately bad and democracy is always better. Consider that first, you haven't shown us the evidence that democracy is better than autocracy. You haven't shown that evidence. I mean, yeah, the autocracy in Khmer Rouge was bad, but in Cambodia it was bad. But what it brought, that barbarity? It was autocracy, yes, but what brought the autocracy? Basically, the bombing of the democratic of Uncle Sam's managers who have gone to power in a democratic system, kept on bombing not only Vietnam but the neighbors of Vietnam. So basically, the whole system was collapsed, and some cocksuckers got control, and they became very bad autocrats. Yeah, sure, but who started the fucking thing? Your democracy. You see what I'm saying? China, the Mao, the march and the Cultural Revolution and all the killing and the bloodletting, yeah, it was bad. But what participated to that? What came before that caused that? Being abused by the British democratic British imperial empire. Abused them for so many centuries that, in order to the natives to assert control over their land, was that to go through a bloody period of purging both the capitalists and the feudalists until they can get on their way. But it always starts with one of your democracies or these pink skin countries with Western values. One of these goes in, tries to or does colonize them for a long time, screws them left and right, and then some kind of chaos takes over under a autocracy, and there's more bloodletting. Again, Mr. Jon Stewart, please, you know, when you reevaluate your perspective with regards to, you know, just because it's an autocracy, it must be bad. And we are democracy, then we must be good. And those failures are exceptions. No, the times that you were good are exceptions. The presidency of Carter was an exception. No new war started. The presidency of Trump was an exception. Pulled up, did the major deal with the Afghans and pulled out. That was a good thing. Again, sir, we are going to go back to what about the women's right and democracy? What about this and what about that in Afghanistan? Have you do you have you considered Afghan people in their native habitat might be very different from you? You born and raised in New York, one of the boroughs in New York. You think at age 18 or to age 28, age 38, age 48, age 58, you think you were mentally close to what an Afghan is at that age or was at that age in Afghanistan, born and raised? No, it's not. So if you're mentally are not that, your perspective in life is not that, and he's not you and you're not him. And a lot of this concept of autocracy and democracy have the right to say anything, or it all goes with the fucking culture, and the culture is not you know static. It does move, but very slowly on its own pace. Cultures change on their own pace. Went in North America, it went from we kill the gays to we celebrate the gays. I think it's a little too much, but still, it took what 200 years. There are pictures of women in being written up by police in beaches of New York and Pennsylvania for having too short of a skirt. There are pictures of it. That means it happened in, I guess, late 19th century, early 20th century. Early 20th century, there were women were being written tickets for, not abiding by the local law of how short their skirt or their swimming trunk can be. It took 100 years from that to this. So cultures change over time at their own pace, and you understand the culture you know, in the mountains of Afghanistan changes much slowly than the culture in New York, which is a hub of the world, is very different from a sub of the world. The guy gets they get a new guy in their village once a year, Pat, who's just happened to be lost. He ends up in their village in Afghanistan, and but as opposed to one of the busiest ports and airports and seaports in the world, which is New York. Of course, their culture is going to change much slowly, and their ideas about autocracy and what is right and what is not right, and autocracy is right, is ingrained within their brain because it's their traditional culture. So you're telling me that no, the same system that we profess that is working for us. As I said, you can't show me that it's worked for you with all the suffering involved and all the meat grinding until a few rise to the top in a democratic capitalist system. Hasn't worked for you, but you're prescribing for the Afghan on top of the mountain whose culture is still 200 years ago, from 300 years ago. And this was exactly, I met a guy who introduced himself that I was a special op in Afghanistan and this and that, and I looked at him, I said, so he said, what do I know? He said, so they're living in the last century. What were you doing there? And he started laughing, and he said, you're the only one who got it. I just saw them. They're living in the last century in terms of, manners, technology, beliefs, culture, religion. They're living in the last century, 19th century, not even 20th century, 19th century. Why do you think you can push them in 21st century to introduce them to democracy? And to democracy, it's like as opposed to autocracy. He's lucky, he's lucky he understands autocracy. Let me put it this way, in short. As a anecdotal evidence, I was never in my life, in my home, I was never asked a simple question that many mothers in your culture ask their children. I was never asked, what do you want for lunch, or what do you want for dinner. I was never asked that question, ever. It was understood that whatever the fuck we give you to eat, you eat it and you shut the fuck up. That's it. I was never asked, never given an option. And it was very, it contrasted, and it was, part due to culture and part due to the fact that, Uncle Sam's managers, the Pinkskins, have decided to put half of the world under sanction, including the shithole that I was growing up in. So during my growing up years, we were always under sanction. So that's another thing. Sanction means, you eat what you can find at the store. Who are you punishing? You're punishing them motherfuckers for not bending over. Okay, go right ahead. But what the fuck did I do? Anyway, my point is this. But what the fuck did the population do that they have to suffer because their leaders don't want to bend over? Anyway, bend over to your ideals of, no, 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 you should practice democracy because it has worked so well for us. And because of that, and because you don't want to practice democracy, we were going to sanction you and embargo you, as if that will make the population feel better. Salute. So, in order to push them towards a form of government that they don't understand and don't have the culture to understand, in order to push them towards a form of government that they don't understand, you embargo and sanction them to prevent them the, to prevent the proper functioning of the form of government that they do understand, to prevent them from functioning the form of government that they do understand. You sanction them in order to push them towards a form of government that they don't understand. Does that make any sense to you? It's sort of like, oh, you're taking that drug and it's working for you. No, no, no. That drug is called autocracy. You're taking that drug and it's working for you, and you have order and security and stability and a lot of things going for you. Now you have to go off that drug, or else we're going to force feed you our drug. Is called democracy. It hasn't worked for us, but you have to take this medicine. Not that medicine, this medicine. It hasn't worked for us, but we're sure democracy will work for you. But nevertheless, you have to put aside your medicine, the autocracy, and you have to take our medicine, the democracy. And if you don't, we're going to sanction and embargo until you beg for democracy. The simple reality is certain cultures at where they are right now, maybe in 10 years, 20 years, half a century, full century, they for sure they will be at the different point in their journey, and at that point they may want to practice some kind of democracy in a format that you understand. But that's must be left up to them. You work with what you got. If an autocrat over there is bringing peace and stability, you work with the autocrat. No sanctions, no embargoes, no bend over or else, none of that. If you mean well, if you mean well, what was the condition before Russia attacked? Ukraine was independent, somewhat under Russian influence, or independent. But everybody was eating and everybody was working and economies were okay. And the Russians were selling natural resources, and the Europeans were selling the Russians end products. Everything was okay until you decided to expand NATO. Why? Who are you expanding it against? Russia. You could have invited Russia in. You can invite the whole planet in. But that's not the point, is it? The point is an exclusive club of pink skins forming a gang to protect themselves. And they don't accept the Russians as pink skins. The Russians are the original pink skin on your planet. Sir, please show us democracy works. First step, show us it works. Show us the standard of living that the people in Finland have. Show us that. Then if there is any money left over, you can go and try to show the rest of the world why they should change to democracy. And hopefully not by force, by example. Or else, I think that autocracy in China is working. I think the autocracy in Russia is working. Do you see the democracy in India? The president of India went to the wedding of the son of the richest man in India. The president went and kissed the ass of the son of the richest man in India. That's democracy for you. Is that what you want? Is that logical to have the representative of 1 billion and some people going up and kissing the ass of one, uh, you know, the son of one family, the fat son of one family? Has it worked for India? It hasn't worked for India either. Please read some statistics about India. You go over there and you see the level of poverty, and you're disgusted with yourself as a human being. Please do go. Please see what democracy as opposed to autocracy creates. Go. Here's the thing, Mr. Jon Stewart. Please, pretty please, take your family, go for a trip to China and India. I suggest first go to India because you want to end your trip with a better impression. So end your trip with China. First go to India for a month with your family. For a month, I say, because so you can experience the grime. Go to India with your family, and then after that go to China for a month. one of average their average city in India and an average city in China. They will not recognize you, and you're safe. Just go anonymously. Just see the difference. One is a democracy, the Asian style. One is a democracy, and one is an autocracy. I don't think Mr. Tucker Carlson did anything wrong by reporting from Russia. I think he should also report from China. You should go to China. You should go to India. You both should go to India and then go to China and come and tell us more about your perspective with regards to democracy and autocracy. I think it's good. Please, I look forward to that. You're doing a couple of your shows from India and a couple of your shows from China. Love to see it. When you say global village and globalization, Tucker is not for globalization, and he did his show a couple of times from Russia. A couple of episodes of his show is from Russia. You do believe in globalization and you believe in the global village, please, then you should be, it should be right up your alley to do some shows in India for a month and some shows in China for a month. And believe me, they both more or less, there are you can find many people in both countries who speak fluent English who can come to your shows. Then the evidence will speak for itself with some, B-rolls that you take, hopefully, and show people. Democracy is not for everyone. Every form of government is not substitutable for every other form of government. The culture and the history and the geography and the weather and the food and everything makes a difference in which and to the extent of what form of governance can these people be governed by, whether it should be a little more autocracy or a little more democracy. But then you go back to the fact that even democracy hasn't even worked for you, not the majority of your people. I mean, working two jobs and being content to live off on meager income, but try to live vicariously through TV, the life of rich and famous, is a joke. It's a joke. You have you know people living in mobile homes with very little in savings, then watching the life of rich and famous on TV, which has been the case that you know ever since TV was there. People more and more started living their life vicariously, living the life that they wanted to live through TV, and you're selling it. But so that doesn't mean democracy has been successful. That means propaganda and advertisement has been successful. When everybody is living in a delusion of richness, but very few are actually living a rich life. Salute.